Dillon Storage Center, so that you guys know, I bought it in 2019. It is 70,000 square feet of warehouse. You can see the buildings there. They were in pretty rough shape. And I found it by scouring Crexi. I exported all of the active listings of warehouse space in South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia, and Florida. I think there were like 450 that met my criteria with the square footage and all that. And then I sent it to a VA, and I had the VA scrub it to find only properties that were in qualified opportunity zones. I purchased 70,000 square feet of warehouse space for $260,000. It's been a while since I did the math, but I think it was $2.65 a square foot, right? Now we're in the process, we're in the middle of our third phase of renovation. It's actually an expansion, and we'll talk about the details. But our total renovation cost is $1.735 million. I added in $5,000 for closing costs so I could get to an even $2 million. That's our project cost. This is what it looked like before. That's what you get for $2.65 a square foot. You don't get much, and it was worse than I thought it was. And that'll be, I'll talk more about that when I share some of my lessons learned. But here, again, just a couple quick pictures to give you an idea. Conversion, for those of you that might not know, is when we take an existing building and insert storage units into it, right? We can do that from direct access on the outside, which you'll see, as well as, interior access storage. Oftentimes they're climate controlled. This particular building this one is 45,000 square feet. It was not, and still is not, climate controlled. This is the slide that's a breakdown of all the costs, because one of the big questions I get all the time is, like, what are the anchor points? How do I know how much am I going to spend on a conversion project? And so here's a bunch of line items. Obviously, it's going to differ from facility to facility and building to building, but the part that I want us to focus on tonight is highlighted in red there. So I've blown it up here. This was phase one. This is the first thing we did starting in May of 2019. The total cost of that first building, what I did is I split out the purchase price by square footage, and I allocated, I think, $150K to the bigger building and $115 to the smaller building for the sake of this math, so you could really see how it plays out. We were all in for just under $900K, which meant we spent $26 per rentable square foot. So when you convert a property, 45,000 square foot warehouse, there's hallways and corridors, loading areas, so you lose generally 25% of the total square footage. In this case, we lost even a little more than that because I made it a drive-through building. People literally drive into the middle of this warehouse, and then they can load under roof into their storage units. Some of them have to go down hallways, but because of that, we lost a little more square footage, but even still, $26 a square foot. And our projected rents for this were $218K per year, and that's what we're getting now that building's stabilized at 55 cents a square foot. Feasibility study said we should be able to get up to that building to generate $250K. So we'll see if we get there. Number I want to highlight for you is GRM, gross rent multiplier. This means this is the ratio between our project cost and our annual rents. So let's just use the 3.6 as an example. If this property brings in $250K a year in gross rents, multiply that by 3.6 and you get the total cost of $895. Anything under 4 or 5 or 6 is going very likely to be a very healthy deal, right? So keep that number in mind. We're going to come back to it a little bit. This is the during. This is where, remember when Josh held up like the red X's and the circles and how people that get circles do better? Well, these are all my red X's. I'm going to show you. This is about $900,000 into the project. We were just about done, and I showed up and the entire inside of the building was covered in water, like dripping. It was like raining inside. The floors were soaking wet. It was terrible. Why? Well, because I tried to repair a roof that definitely needed to be replaced. And I tried to pay somebody as little as possible to replace the roof when I finally realized I had to replace it. Both of those were bad moves. I spent $100,000 replacing the roof, and then $30,000 to have a second contractor fix the shoddy work of the first contractor. So I was $130K into the roof. Guess my first quote was from the guy who would have done it right the first time? $130K. And so I would have avoided 6 months of headaches had I not been the cheap guy that Ken's been trying to convince me not to be. There's the roof. This is what the outside of the building looks like. So we have direct access from the outside and then also that hallway down the middle. Again, some more just construction so you can get a sense for the scope of this work. Again, this is just the first building. This is what it looked like inside as the ground started to dry out a little bit. Why that one slab is dry while the rest of the building was wet, I still don't know for sure. But I learned a lot about moisture, and I'm not going to dive into the deep end with you. There's lots of videos in the network about it. But what I think happened is this was a repair, and when they repaired it, they put in underlayment, plastic coating under it, and then poured the concrete on. That's how the whole building should have been done when it was first done, and it wasn't. And so we had water coming in through the roof and coming up through the slab from the ground. Not an easy problem to solve, but I'm happy to report we eventually got there. We figured it out. And this is what the facility looks like. Well, what it looked like as we were starting to rent out units. There's the outside. And there it is again, in all its glory. See, if you can see right in the middle of the building, that giant square metal near the peak. That is a fan that moves 20,000 cubic feet of air per minute. It cost $20,000, and I had to install that. I didn't know those things existed before I ran into all of these moisture problems. It's attached to a humidistat, and if the humidity gets too high, it turns on. Louvers on the other end of the building open up, and it blows air through to kind of move the moisture around a little bit, and it helped some. So here's phase 2. Again, the slide is for our video purposes. I'm going to blow up that second one. Phase 2 was the other warehouse. It was 33,000 square feet. After I allocated $115K to the purchase price, we spent $400K getting that one converted. Now you might ask, well, Mike, why did that one cost $30 a square foot when the other one was $26? The big thing is this second one is climate controlled. Now, if I was building in this market, would I do climate controlled? Absolutely not. It's not. There's not the economic base to support it. But for $4 a square foot, I thought, well, let's give it a shot. If I can get 10 or 15% more in rent for climate controlled, I'll do it, right? The building was already insulated. It already had half the HVAC equipment. It had like 5-ton units. I think I added 4 more to get it up to where it needed to be. The projected rents were $150K. And again, this gross rent multiplier 3.4, which is very, very strong, right? Here's some construction. This is us inside the most expensive door that I've ever bought. It was, I think, $11,000, and I had to buy 2 of them. 1-inch thick glass gives you an idea of the kind of market I'm in. Pardo feels me on that, right? We haven't had any of it broken yet, thank God. But I use this picture because of the excavator in the background. We also had to do a bunch of drainage work here. We effectively lowered the water table at the parcel by 18 inches by creating a perimeter swale, it's called. It's basically just a very long, skinny ditch, right? You see them on the side of the road all around our property so that we could basically drain all the water out from under the buildings and get it out to the sides and then run it off into the city's drainage. A lot of work, but we solved the problem. There's the door, because you pay $11,000 for a door, you put 2 pictures in. This is what it looks like on the inside. We've got our ADA accessible units. I think it came out pretty good. There's more of the drainage work that we did. And this is what it looks like today. This picture was a month or 2 ago. This is the what's next. We've got about 3,000 square feet of office space left in this building. We'll never turn it into offices because that sounds hard, but I will turn it into storage. I'm actually waiting right now for a measurement on those doors. If they're 36 inches, I'll probably just throw swing doors on them and rent them out as storage. I'm not going to do any conversion. I'm not going to move walls or anything. I'm just going to rent out the space that's there. If those doors are a little too narrow, I may pop out and do overhead doors, but we'll figure it out.